The presenting sponsor for On Education is Schoology. Schoology is not only the best learning management system, it's also a community of lifelong learners. There's so many things to love about Schoology, but my favorite is the company's passion to connect with their teachers and students to deliver the best product possible. If you want to learn more about Schoology and how they can help you advance what's possible, visit Schoology.com.
Hey, Canada 101, the leader of Canada, guys, is a prime minister. Welcome to On Education. I'm Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will recap the Apple event, discuss Esports cover of ESPN The Magazine, talk about whether teachers should be running as political candidates, and our guest this week is Doug Levin, who wrote this incredible article for EdSurge about student hackers.
Did you watch the Apple event?
I watched some of it. It's a lot of, well, I guess that's what it's supposed to be, self-promo, you know? A lot of people clapping about things.
Aren't these phone names so dumb now? Like, these are dumb names, aren't they?
What is that one? The X one? Or?
What is X Max?
I have no idea. Is that
like? I mean, I know what it is. I just think it's a stupid
MacBook?
name. What's that?
Are you gonna get one of those? It's like the size of a MacBook screen.
It's big. That's.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
need
like a mini
new
iPad.
I'm getting a new phone. You know, I don't want to call it the X Max.
X
That
Max.
sounds like a dumb thing to say when people ask you what kind of phone you have.
I've got the X Max.
It's just what a stupid name. Why couldn't they have just? And then there's XS.
Okay.
And then there's X. Is it XS Max?
I guess.
And then there's XR or something. There's three, right? There's like, so stupid.
People are obsessed with the letter X, I guess.
I guess. So will the next one be the 11?
I guess. Because it's the X represents 10? Is that what?
And then the S is like the mid-year. So like they've typically done like iPhone 7, then 7S, then 8.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yep.
So this is, and they skipped 9, you know, because no one likes 9 when you
because the number 9
X.
is like, yeah.
Why do 9 when you can have the X, right?
Let's just skip right to that.
Right. Everyone hates on 9. 9's like the redheaded stepchild of the family.
That's pretty strange.
But the watch is exciting. The watch is supposed to be really damn good now. Like,
how much do those watches cost, though?
I think they went down in price too. Like,
how much?
Like, are they? So, like they're still like in the $400 or $500 range. Like you're still buying a $400 or $500 watch.
That's so insane. I saw that. I thought that might be the price, but I was like, no, it's got to be like $200. No, it's $400 or $500.
But they've added some interesting monitoring stuff, and I mean, I don't know. I think they're sexy as hell. They look so good. I like my Fitbit. I have the Fitbit Versa. It looks almost like an Apple Watch.
Does it?
And it does everything just about that an Apple Watch does. I went on Amazon and bought like one of the cool metal bands for it, like a snap-on band, because I hate those plastic ones that Fitbit send with it. That
you know what that reminds me of, though, Mike?
What?
You grew up in the same era that I did. It reminds me of 7th and 8th grade. You know what this reminds me of, right?
The calculator watches?
No, the Swatch watch.
Oh, sure. I never had a Swatch. I was pretty poor when I grew up.
Dude, so. I didn't have a Swatch. I didn't even... I was never going to get a Swatch, but everybody had those different bands on them, you know, those elastic little pink colored bands and whatever other colors you could get. Yeah.
I did have red suede high top shoes though.
Nice. Were they Converse?
They were Franklin. I think that's like a knockoff brand, right?
Yeah, that's the Kmart brand. I love those.
Right.
Yes. I had some of those.
Oh, man. Taking me back.
I know. So anyway, the Apple Watch, yes, it is amazing. You know, a lot of the things I'm just like, God, is that kind of tech really that much? It is, then. You know, it really does.
Well,
you know, they can
it's
price
not,
it
because they're the most profitable company on the planet, so
True.
They're making money hand over fist. They're charging as much as the market can bear. Yay, capitalism. Like, I mean, they have, what do they have? Something like $100 billion in the bank. They they're the only company that has just truckloads of money and nothing to do with it. They have absolutely nothing to do.
Wow,
With
that
all
must
of
be a
this
nice
money.
problem to have.
Right. Who would have thought I could use $100,000? $100,000 would change my life.
Yeah.
Like completely.
$100,000 would
my
change
life.
any teacher's life. We should put that out on a Twitter thing. How much
$50,000 would change my life.
How much?
If I had $50,000.
If you just gave someone $50,000 in cash, no taxes associated with it.
Talk about spurring on the economy.
Yeah.
You give every family $50,000. And it's like
it'd be an interesting experiment to see what people would do with this.
unbelievable.
Exactly. we all would blow it too.
Right. I'd have a new car. Wouldn't pay off the bills, Just have another car payment. Yeah, because I wouldn't buy a $50,000 car. I'd buy I'd buy a Tesla, and then say, but I put $50,000 down on it.
It's half price.
Someone would do that.
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't know how we got so off topic. That's hilarious.
I'd pay my bills. Let's get back on topic. We are going to FETC. We're going to mention this every time because I'm really, really pumped about FETC. Listen, there's a lot of reasons I'm pumped. I mean, I guess the first one is that when we said if this podcast grows, the thing that we want to do the most is just go other places.
Exactly.
And we want to use the money that we make, if we make money, heaven forbid.
Yes.
We want to use that to go places that we don't want to, we're not pocketing it. We're not using it as like income. We're paying the bills.
Yep.
We do have bills.
And
we want to go places.
Exactly. Let's go connect with other people.
And so that's what we're doing. We're taking the money and we're dumping it back in and we're going places. So we're going to FETC, and now we have the money to go to FETC, ISTE, and Schoology next. And those are 3 awesome conferences. We love them. They're great. And I mean, we're just going to keep adding places to go as we go. So FETC is a big deal. And we got some plans. So there's a lot of things that are going to happen as we ramp up to FETC. But I guess one of the things we want to throw out there right now is that if you're presenting at FETC, if you want to come on and promo your session, get in touch with us, send us a message on Twitter, DM Glen, DM me, DM the pod, whatever, but get in touch with us. We want to get people on. We love when guests make themselves known to us as opposed to us having to hunt for them. It is one of the hardest parts of putting this show together is coming up with a new person to talk to every week. But we want to talk to people who are presenting at FETC, especially if you're talking about things like right now we're really into games-based learning. We're really into esports, really into project-based learning. You're going to hear from Doug Levin a little bit later on the show talking about internet safety not internet safety, but like cybersecurity and hacking and infrastructure policy. Super interesting discussions. Even like politics and government. And if you're involved in presenting or talking about that kind of stuff, we want to hear from you. So if you're presenting at FETC, reach out, slide into our DMs and get after us because we want to talk about this stuff and we want to have you on.
Absolutely.
We're ramping up this. We are in full FETC mode over the next 3 months. We're going to have, we're working with the folks at FETC, the actual people running it. They're going to supply us with people that are presenting as well. So you might get a word from them about possibly coming on the show, which would be awesome.
Yeah.
So take that opportunity. We want to talk to you guys.
For sure. You guys are awesome. We want you to be on the show.
Totally. What else?
Well, I ran into an article about basically teachers being tired of legislators who are ignoring the education in general or promising things but never delivering, which happens way often. And basically they're like, we're going to run as political candidates. And the article kind of goes through giving several different examples of people that are currently running for some sort of seat, whether it be for Congress or their state congresses or legislators. And how difficult it actually is as a teacher. I mean, you still have to teach full time. You're not going to get some kind of time to be able to go ahead and be able to run your your forum
Campaign.
your campaign.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. And I was thinking about you then too, Mike, because
Mm-hmm.
you helped obviously local candidates who were the guy that was on the show.
Pekka.
He was a teacher too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So he was lucky. He took a 1 month leave of absence, leading like the month before.
Yes.
But like not every district, not every school board is going to be
willing to
as
do that.
supportive
Exactly.
as that. I mean, it was, and even then, I mean, he takes a leave of absence. He's not getting paid.
No.
Right? I mean, he's
not getting paid.
Taking a leave of absence and not making any money because
Yes.
he wanted to win. And listen, no one worked harder than Pekka. And I think teachers running for office is amazing.
Yes, it is.
In so many ways. But think about this. When you wrote this on here, I thought, who better to run for election than this? Someone who's fairly well educated. I mean, we're not talking PhDs and master's degrees, even though some of them do, and some of our best educator friends have PhDs and master's degrees. So I'm not saying that, but well educated, and they have a lived experience.
Yes.
That is kind of like just like average, kind of normal people lived experience, but also the shared experiences of their students and their communities.
Yes. Really connected to the communities, to what's actually happening, not only
Right.
within the school environment, but also within their local communities, to be able to say, hey, these are the issues that my students are facing, which obviously is what we all are facing within the specific districts that they actually work for. So I love people like here in Minnesota, we have Tim Walls, who was a former history teacher. I know that I was trying to look up like who else has actually, been teachers. And of course, you guys' president is a teacher, right?
Sorry?
Your president, Trudeau, was formerly
Prime
a
Minister.
teacher.
That's
Your
why
Prime
you
Minister.
threw me off. You called him the president.
Sorry, that's
Wow. Terrible. Yes, our Prime Minister. Hey, Canada 101.
Your
the leader
president,
of Canada,
Prime
guys,
Minister.
is a Prime Minister. His name is Justin Trudeau, and he was a teacher.
And he was a teacher, right? Yes.
And a boxer, apparently.
Oh.
No, that's a joke.
Okay.
But yes, no,
Yes.
he was a teacher. The
Yeah,
Prime
but I was looking
Minister of
at
Canada.
Elizabeth Warren. We have quite a few, actually,
Professor.
educators. Yes, exactly. Educators who have been in education in K through 12 or at the university level, and then now are running for different political offices, which is super awesome. And if obviously those people are on your ballot, go out there and support them.
Yes. Ironically, the Secretary of Education
Yes.
was not an educator. Just saying. I'm just saying. Just saying.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there. No, totally. I can't think of better, more well-rounded people. The perfect balance of life experience and education, and ideally some critical thinking skills and emotional, well-roundedness. Most educators fit that description to a T.
For sure.
And that's the type of people we want, and the diversity of experience too. I mean, educators, even in a state, let's talk about Minnesota, where you have like the Twin Cities, and then you have, which are like super urban, like
Yes.
big cities, large major metropolis areas, with lots of diversity and minorities and all of that stuff. And then you have urban or rural areas, which are totally not
Very
overly
rural.
diverse and
Yes.
stuff like that. So you have, even in Minnesota is the perfect example of the diversity of experience. So if you get all of those educators that run and win together, you have a giant level of diversity in your elected officials that gives a diversity of opinions and perspectives and lived experiences to speak to the issues related to different groups and different areas of expertise.
Yes. Absolutely.
Perfect. It'd be ideal.
Ideal.
So perfect. What else we got going on here?
The last thing I was talking about is we actually brought this up last week about, well, not last week, but a couple of weeks ago, about France banning the cell phones. And
Yeah,
so there was
good
another
idea.
article, exactly, there was another article written basically in the Washington Post, and it just said, the article is making the argument, instead of banning cell phones, here's some things that we should be helping our students with, our kids with. Things like making sure that they get enough sleep. I know a lot of parents right now actually take the cell phones away from their kids, and they all put all their cell phones in a certain area at night. I'm talking about, and then that way the kids actually get to sleep, and they're not on their phone or you're checking the latest snap or whatever it might be, and then they get good sleep. Just really smart things that you can do with your kids right now, instead of saying, no, we're banning cell phones, and that's going to cure all of these problems in the world. So things like playing more outside and really spending less time with digital media, getting out and then actually reading books. That's awesome, And one of the things that is also a lost thing that's number 5 on their list is, how about writing a letter? Nobody does that really anymore, especially to your loved ones. Like my kids are separated from my parents, by the whole country, basically. They're down in the Southwest. So it'd be great if they could write these things and send and draw them things. And, we talk about our kids all the time and say, if they're not constantly on games or media itself, they might be talking about them and creating because of those things. Like the inspiration comes from some of these things, but it's not like that's where they live, and making sure that we have a good balance of all of those things.
It's just about balance, isn't it?
Balance.
My kid plays Fortnite. My kid has an iPod. He loves his iPad. He loves his Xbox. But, he reads and he draws.
Yes.
And I'll admit he doesn't go outside as much as we'd like him to. And that's as much my fault as same. But we do have him in Scouts. So we do Scouts.
Yes.
And I'm a Scout leader, actually, to add to the things I don't have time for. And... but it's a priority, and we go camping. We do go outside, and it's about balance.
Yes.
Just have balance in your lives, and you won't have these issues. I really feel that. I realize that there are one-off situations where no matter what you try to do, you're gonna have kids who have like addiction tendencies and stuff like that.
For sure.
That you can't like just say
it's going to be a specific
have balance.
Case. Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
It's like telling a depressed person to stop being depressed. Depression is a real thing, and you can't just say stop, right? Well, I suppose that there are issues like that with technology and addiction and stuff like that. There are.
But banning cell phones in schools doesn't solve anything, especially
going
because
from 0 to 100 right away is any situation is ridiculous.
And cell phones aren't going away. So we just talked about them for a long time. All they're going to do is become more prevalent, more
100%.
So then you have to learn how to live with them.
Yes,
and that's the biggest thing.
100%. When we come back, we're going to talk about what seems like a pretty regular topic here these days. It's in the news again.
Yes,
in a huge way. We're going to talk about esports.
On Education is brought to you by Teacher Gaming. Teacher Gaming Desk is an all-in-one toolkit for any teacher looking to use more games in their classroom. And Teacher Gaming just launched a dedicated Chromebook subscription bundle with 20 awesome games. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's only $99 per class per year. So you got your whole class, you got 20 different games that can be played on a Chromebook. How great is that? If you want to learn more about Teacher Gaming, simply go to teachergaming.com to get started.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. Esports is huge everywhere, all the time now. And we've spent so much time talking about it as it relates to education. I wrote that article with our buddy Steve Isaacs. And and now it's really, really, if it hadn't hit the big time before, I feel like this is another big moment in esports, and eventually this stuff all filters down to like esports and education, which is why we're talking about it so much. But Ninja, if you don't know who Ninja is. Ninja is easily the most popular game streamer in the world.
Yes.
We've referenced this guy a couple times before. He's insanely popular. He's insanely engaging. He's super interesting, and he's very I've seen instances where he's come on and just like randomly replied to people on Twitter and said, yeah, I'll talk to you for a few minutes by video or whatever. So, I mean, he's incredibly popular. He plays Fortnite mainly, I suppose. But this guy's the real deal. And,
Yes.
and he is the first esports player, or the first, video game
athletes.
player.
Yeah.
To be featured on the cover of the ESPN The Magazine.
Yes.
And it's really, first off, the cover is legit. Like,
It's awesome.
what a cool looking cover.
Yes.
And Glenn and I were just talking about the pictures in the article even, and
We'll
looking
link
at
it
his
for you
rig
guys.
and
You guys got to
looking
check
at his
this
rig.
out.
We're like, we got to actually talk about his rig on the podcast, because boy, oh boy, we're gonna link the article in the show notes.
Yes.
But talk about Ninja for a bit, and you had some thoughts on this guy, I guess.
So Ninja's real name is Tyler Blevins. He's 27 years old, which you would never, looking at him, he's a young 27.
Yeah, he looks like he's 19.
He looks like he's 18 or 19 years old, which is probably part of the appeal. My sons watch him play, just like they watch, Dan TDM play online. And you've talked a lot about just how much money is in this industry now. And this guy is making basically 7 figures a month. And the article's amazing, though, because you could read about it and really get an insight into his life. And, someone might go like, this guy's playing video games. Must be a nice life. It's really a grind, though. He is basically online 6 days a week for 16 hours a day. He does an 8-hour shift basically in the morning, eats dinner, and then does another 8-hour shift at night. And he needs to do that in order to go ahead and continue basically building up his subscribers and building up his personal brand. And within the article is so cool, Mike. He talks about basically saying, I'm hoping that that this is not the peak, but I'm preparing for it to be the peak. Do you know what I mean? That once, will Fortnite always be as popular as it is right now? We don't know. And so therefore he knows that he's going to have to make a transition into something else, and he's already starting to prepare for all those kinds of things. Even just going and doing the interview for this ESPN The Magazine and the photo shoots, he was talking about like how he loses like $70,000 a day because of how much subscribers drop off his channel when he doesn't stream one time. So it's so crazy. It's just awesome. And I think as far as life type lessons, number one, sure, he's making 7 figures a month, but he is a grinder. I mean, this guy's and he's got obviously a phenomenal personality. He's gifted in this, and he's also an amazing player of the game. So it's not just, I'm a great personality and then now I'm good. No, he's one of the best players in this specific, game, this Fortnite game. So it's super cool. I loved reading it because it just gives you a great insight, and it gives you great talking points, like for your kids, if they're your kids like my sons, or for your students, those kids, and be able to talk through those kind of things and say, hey, it is a legitimate career, but just understand it's a grind and it's tough and it's competitive, and you're kind of out there by yourself too. He is his own brand. He is his own company. So it was super cool. To be able to go ahead and read that, and that he was also featured on that is very timely for what we've been talking about.
It's amazing. I'm just reading the story of his life and how they had to move out of the house they were living in and move to more like a gated community because people were literally just showing up at his door because they figured out where he lives.
Yes.
And how he takes a day off for a date day because, the guy's smart and he realizes that you have to have balance and you have to maintain relationships and spend time with your wife. His wife manages his quote unquote business side of things. So she does meetings and phone calls and stuff like that. And there was actually a really funny picture on Twitter probably a week or two ago of Ninja's wife posted that she was on a FaceTime call with Brett Favre.
Okay.
and she took a screenshot of it because she couldn't believe. She's like, can you believe that I'm FaceTiming with Brett Favre right now? This is my life now, and it's amazing. Like, it's unbelievable.
That's so awesome.
Like they're legit, and they're hard workers. They, the 6 hours in the morning, and then they take a break at around 4.
Yes.
And then he's back on for another 6 hours at 8. And I mean, that's a grind. That's a 12-hour day. And look down your nose all you want, but these guys are working hard.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, and super talented. I mean, if he wasn't doing this, he would be doing some other kind of personality type of thing, a radio guest, a TV show type of personality, because he's amazing, really quick-witted. And again, if you're on for 16 hours live, that is so hard. I mean, that is so crazy difficult to do and continue, keep that energy up.
Yeah.
Not only just playing the game, but keep your energy as far as your audience engaged and, communicating with them. Man, it's just hard. It's crazy.
I like what you said before, because one of the things that I've been thinking about is I've been streaming a little bit more lately, and streaming with friends, Steve and Paul DeVarzy and other people. You haven't been on the stream yet, Glenn.
I'll jump on.
Almost a couple times, I guess. We're gonna play Hearthstone, I guess.
That's awesome.
Anyways, one of the things that I thought about when you mentioned it was you got to be good too. Like, this guy just isn't entertaining. He's a damn good video game player.
He's crazy. He's so ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, and just awesome.
You've got to be good. Like, you can't just be entertaining. So he's got the perfect combination of all this stuff. So let's talk about how this relates to kids.
Yes.
First off, kids are watching this guy constantly.
Yeah.
He's a hero.
Absolutely.
To some of these kids. 12-year-olds. Ask any 12-year-old who Ninja is. And they'll know.
They'll know, exactly.
Of course they'll know. And ask almost any 12-year-old what Fortnite is. And they'll know. Ask any 12-year-old what flossing is. And they'll
know
do
the
it
dance.
for you.
Exactly.
They will floss in the hallway. Stop and floss, and they'll go, yeah. It'll be hilarious. If you floss for your students, they'll lose their minds. Promise you. I challenge someone to floss for their kids and put it on video and then tag us in a tweet. There's your weekly challenge.
That would be hilarious.
We don't do those things, but we should. There's a challenge for you listeners. Floss for your kids, especially young elementary kids.
Or let them teach you that. Exactly.
They'll lose it. And so whether you like it or not, whether you think it's a bad thing or a good thing, this is where your kids are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they're doing when they go home. And would you rather be engaged with your kids and what they're doing at home and help them make smart decisions related to their media consumption and talking about it and engaging, like just developing a community and having fun with your kids? Or would you rather, poo-poo it and say it's a bad thing and ignore it? I guess that's my first take on this, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, as parents, we need to know what our kids are obviously doing online. And if this is their passion, they're actually, and a lot of kids, this is their passion, then get involved and kind of find out about it. Watch some of the things. I think you'll actually be entertained, and you'll start to understand why it's so compelling. It's a combination of watching live sports plus watching a TV show. That's what it feels like to me. It's like you merge those things perfectly together with the right person or personality, and honestly, that's why people are watching Twitch, and for hours on end.
100%. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, especially at the older levels, esports is becoming a legit thing.
It's a real thing.
We've talked about this a few times. And so not only is Ninja at the forefront of, the entertainment side of this, but then these kids want to do this too. And they want to do it in even in school. And things like the NASEF are starting to facilitate, high school esports competitions as an outlet for students who may not be, maybe they can't catch a football at 30 yards away.
Yeah.
But, they can jungle on League of Legends like it's no one's business.
Yes.
And why wouldn't we give them an outlet to be competitive,
yes,
to be passionate about something,
to be part of a team.
to be part of a team
Yes.
and know what that feels like and to do that well.
Yep.
Why wouldn't we do that? You can't give me an argument that's stronger than that.
Yep.
Against this. You can't. There's no argument you can make that's stronger than that we need to provide. We should be in the business of providing opportunities for kids where they are, not where we want them to be.
Yes, absolutely. And this is a legitimate sport now. I mean, it really is. Whether people want to accept it or not, or, they're poo-pooing it like you just said, doesn't matter. It is what it is. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry with the Twitch channel and YouTube Live, whatever it might be, as far as streaming itself. And these guys are at the forefront of it. And we want to make sure we're helping guide our students to the right places.
100%. Absolutely. So we're going to put the article about Ninja in the show notes. We're going to put, there's actually a couple we're going to link that are super interesting. Lots of reading homework for you on this episode of On Education. We have the article coming up with our next guest as well. When we come back, we're going to talk to cybersecurity expert Doug Levin.
On Education is brought to you by Audible.
So I got to tell you about this book. So I'm reading a book called You Can't Spell America Without Me. It's written by Alec Baldwin, and it's in Trump's vernacular. Like, it's in his voice. Like, it's written. It's like as if it was written by Donald Trump. Okay. And so I'm reading it, and I'm thinking every time I'm reading it, I'm hearing Donald Trump's voice reading it to me. So I looked up on Audible if it was there, and I'm telling you it's there.
Oh,
so this is Alec Baldwin in the voice of Donald Trump reading the book You Can't Spell America Without Me. You've gotta listen to this. It is an absolute nightmare of a book. It's hysterical. So all that you guys have to do to listen to You Can't Spell America Without Me is go to audibletrial.com/oneducation. That's audibletrial.com/oneducation, and you will get a free audiobook download, which you should totally use for You Can't Spell America Without Me by Alec Baldwin, read to you by Alec Baldwin in the voice of Donald Trump. There's nothing better. So go do that, like, right now. All right, welcome back to the podcast, guys. This is Doug Levin. We're here with Doug Levin. He wrote an article on EdSurge, and I couldn't resist but having him on the show. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much for having me.
So tell us a bit about the story that you wrote about specifically. I think, actually, first, tell us about what you do and where you're from and what your background is. I think that's an important primer to this conversation for sure.
Yeah, sure. So currently I run my own consulting firm, and I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area. I've spent my career working in a variety of roles, primarily in U.S. education policy, often with an emphasis on issues of technology. So just to give you a sample of some of the things that I've done over the years, I was the executive director of CETA, the State Educational Technology Directors Association, for about 5 years. I spent some time with the National Association of State Boards of Education, and for many years I was at sort of a think tank and research shop called the American Institutes for Research. So, a variety of roles, but always interested in the intersection of education and technology.
Awesome. All right, so this article you wrote for EdSurge, super interesting. I was like constantly nodding my head. I've run into issues with students and IT systems quite a bit. I'm a computer science teacher, and I've had a hand in our one-to-one program and our network infrastructure and all that stuff. So talk about the article a little bit and talk about this story a little bit that you told, and even give us some details if you have anything that was left out of the article in terms of what's going on, even since the article has been written or anything like that.
Wow. Well, all right. That's a lot to chew on right there. So let me start actually way at the beginning. So actually, the article that you read on EdSurge was actually a reposting of an article that I had done on a site that I run, K12cybersecure.com.
Right.
And that's a site focused primarily on emerging cybersecurity issues facing schools as they increasingly rely on technology. And so I've been tracking cybersecurity incidents, and one of the themes that I've seen over the time that I have been doing it is that some significant percentage of incidents do involve students in some way. And as I started to see the incidents, I started to have some questions about how the students were being treated in some of these incidents, and also how these students were able to accomplish what they did on school IT systems. Because to me, it suggested that maybe there was an issue with how the school had set some things up, and that students shouldn't have been able to do that in the first place.
Yeah.
And so what happened is in June of this year, I got a phone call out of the blue from the mother of the student in this story. And this is while the disciplinary issues were still being debated in the school district, and the district was investigating her son on sort of computer-related charges, and she was just looking for help. And so I think she just went online looking to find anybody who had any insights or advice. And it turned out that I was able to help her, a little bit, give her a little advice, and ended up speaking to her lawyer as well. But I made an open invitation to her at the time, which was, depending on how things worked out, that this was that I had sympathy and empathy for her son in this situation, that the school district seemed to be treating this case a little harshly from what I could tell, but that if she wanted to, tell her story, to get back in touch with me. And that's just in fact what she did.
Awesome. So you ask a lot of really interesting questions at the beginning of the article. And I can't help but come back to the fact that so one part of this story that's incredibly revealing and interesting and asks way more questions than it answers is the fact that the username and password for the account that this student seemed to be using and was on a notepad, on a note attached to the friggin' computer. So I just couldn't help but shake my head and get really frustrated about that. So I guess my question is, do you have any sense that whoever did this, whoever left what appears to be a full-blown administrator account, username and password on the computer, were they taken to task for it? Because I'll tell you, where I am, if a teacher had done this, even with my username and password, if I had put it on my monitor, I would have been just blasted, definitely written up, and it would not have been pretty. Do you have any sense of, I know it asks way more questions, but do you have any sense of what they've resolved in terms of, just what happened with the person that actually did this and how irresponsible it was in the first place? Well,
what I can gather from talking to the family involved, this wasn't a one-off occurrence. The student involved related several examples of administrative sort of username and passwords being sort of on sticky notes on computers over the years. And in fact, I was speaking to a reporter, and she was pressing me on how tech savvy, how would I describe the student involved? Was he very tech savvy, for instance? And, at one level, clearly he was, but at another level, I don't know. I'm not convinced that if the system was properly secured, that he could have gotten in. Right. So, and it's not just that the username and password was on the computer, right? That on the for the administrative account was on next to the computer. That's bad enough. That's not good. But this shared administrative account had student usernames and passwords available in a file clearly marked in plain text. In another folder was an application that allowed you to change sort of administrative roles and rights and roles for every user in the district.
Unbelievable.
Right. At some point, he and his 12-year-old friend were able to install a cryptocurrency miner on a district server.
I read that.
And the district, like the kid was incredulous because they're running the CPU on the school server flat out, and they ran it for I don't even know how long. Sounds like months. And they never caught it, right? So they weren't looking at their logs. And ultimately how they got caught, right, was they had figured a scheme to get around the school filtering system. I think it was iBoss what they used. But the way they did it is they found an old teacher account. This is a teacher who is no longer with the district for at least 2 years.
The account was still there.
It was still there. It was still active. It was not being monitored. And what the students found is that if you log in under this teacher account, the school filtering system, the district filtering system treated you differently, right? So teachers had different rights than students. And what happened is that spread like wildfire throughout the district because this student and his friend, they're, sort of the original sort of two, started, figuring this out when they were 12 at a middle school, but they went to different high schools. So they told their friends told their friends, and eventually somebody told an administrator or a teacher, or the fact that the whole school was playing Fortnite or on YouTube or whatever, figured out something was wrong, and they fingered a friend of his who then fingered him, and then they caught him that way. So it's not just that the district, had this one issue, right? And so as they were talking to me, I'm like, there's a lot of things that don't really seem to add up. And I even reached out to the district ultimately for comment about this. And they basically, this may be a little unfair to put it this way, but they basically stonewalled me and said, look, everything is fine. What these kids did were wrong. We're pursuing criminal charges and we're not going to talk about an ongoing investigation. But I'll say the story's not over, right? So, because the local community didn't know that there was any issues whatsoever. And now they do. And when I'm still in touch with the family, there will be more written about this, and there'll be, issues brought before the school board. And so we'll sort of see how this ultimately shakes out.
So, two-factor security would have, well, I guess the account was logged into the computer in the first place, but the second time they tried to log into it, they wouldn't have been able to. If two-factor authentication would have stopped them cold in the tracks, right? Because they also realized they figured out a way to do this, to access the system remotely, right? Because the district had set up a remote access system. Sure, they
right,
did.
And so but that account worked, right? So so then that allowed them to continue to do it when they weren't at school and when they went to different high schools. Right. So two-factor would have stopped this in its tracks. Right. They still would have had the physical issue at that machine, that was logged in that public space, but that's a much smaller issue.
So what's crazy about this is that, if you are 14, 15 years old and you play World of Warcraft, you know what two-factor authentication is.
Right.
If you play any sort of game that has an online portion, I'm literally looking at key fobs on my desk for video games. Anyone, could have thought, like, how many layers of administration. No one thought to just enable two-factor authentication. So do you have a sense of how widespread the lack of expertise concerning security really is? And I guess a follow-up question would be that is the lack of expertise and the lack of tools like simple two-factor authentication, is it a budget issue, or is this a red herring calling out budget? Is that a red herring for something else going on? What do you think?
Yeah, so basically what I've seen based on sort of my cybersecurity work, and I've at this point I've documented over 360 cybersecurity incidents just in U.S. Public schools since 2016. So some of those are because of sophisticated outside attackers, like criminally motivated, that would be hard for anybody to stop. But frankly, the vast majority are basic cyber hygiene issues gone wrong. So losing control of passwords, posting stuff publicly when folks didn't realize it was public, falling for really low-level phishing schemes, or downloading ransomware, et cetera, and not having backups and things like that, right? So that suggests to me that there is not enough attention being paid to this. But I mean, I think in some ways it's a budget issue, just because whenever schools have a scarce amount of money that they're gonna, that they want to earmark toward technology, it's always about buying software or buying hardware, right? And then maybe you would think about staffing your internal IT team up, but and maybe you think about professional development, right? But those are not seen really as priorities, right? So they're going to spend every penny they can on getting stuff into people's hands, not so much in supporting its use. And then, right. And then security is like,
the show, that's for sure.
Right. Then security is kind of an afterthought, in part because I think schools haven't been that exposed. But what I'm seeing, and it's not surprising to me in some ways, but what I'm seeing is that as schools are relying on this stuff more and more, they are exposed. And I think they don't really understand where the threats are coming from and what the issues are. I mean, I think things like, multi-factor authentication, I am absolutely seeing a trend in colleges and universities where they're starting to mandate that for everybody at that level. It's definitely the exception to what I've seen at the K-12 level. It can't, kind of to your reaction, it can't stay that way because it's a very, very effective tool at stopping these kinds of vulnerabilities. But there is a bit of a cost to implementing it. It is the security is tough because it requires sort of end users to change their behavior. There's often resistance and people try to sort of work around it and will push back against it. And so ultimately I view it more as a leadership issue, right? And the leadership just has to set this as a priority. And I think they tend to think of this as kind of an IT issue right now, right? Security is an IT thing. They'll just take care of it. It's their job. It's not our responsibility that we're buying all this equipment and connecting all these things to the internet, and not just, classroom computers, but security cameras, routers, printers, telephone systems, HVAC, the HR system in the school district. I mean, there's an enormous amount of stuff that is exposed to the internet. And
no, for sure.
I think people are just wrapping their heads around this issue now. And I've been spending, a lot of time trying to educate people about, the need to pay more attention to this issue. But it's definitely tough. It's tough for schools. I think, what I try to tell people is not to be overwhelmed by it. Really, there's common sense steps that everybody can take to raise awareness, just to try to keep your stuff, sort of patched and up to date. Use password managers, use second factor authentication if you can. Doing anything is better than doing nothing, right? But we're going to need to do a lot more.
It's funny because you said a whole bunch of things that I thought about while I was reading this. I mean, I guess my first thing, I remember posting a couple years ago, and it came up on my Facebook feed a couple days ago, about the fact that we had to buy new headsets for our whole school. I work at a private school, so we're not in a district or anything like that, but had to buy new headsets for all the computers at our school. And we have a lot of devices at our school, and it was thousands of dollars. And some people just simply don't appreciate that things in bulk like that cost a lot of money. And you wouldn't think that like a $30 or $40 headset would be a big deal when you're just buying one for your house, for your kid or whatever. But we had to buy almost hundreds of these things, and things cost money. I have absolutely no idea how much enterprise level two-factor authentication costs. So I can appreciate if someone told me, it's thousands and tens of thousands of dollars to set this up. And, when we can barely buy textbooks, two-factor authentication seems like something that should be a little bit further down on the totem pole. If that's the actual real issue, I'm cool with it. I mean, I can at least engage in the conversation, right? I'm willing to hear you out for sure. So that's, I guess, one point related to what you were saying. But you had said something about the administrators and IT people not even necessarily knowing where the threats are coming from. And one of my biggest thoughts related to this whole issue is what to do with the students. And we have all of these companies all over the place that do things like have bug bounties and security competitions and hackathons. And I'm thinking, why don't we just do this at school? Why don't we actually ask kids to try to break our security and research it, see what they come up with, figure out what they did, and then stop it? I mean, at least then it's engaging these students in solving a problem. You can talk even about your subject here and say, look, this is what happens when you do it the wrong way, but why don't you help us? And we'll give you an outlet for your creativity, because that's, I think, what some of this is. And, have this maybe even a competition. What do you think of ideas like that, even at the K-12 level?
No, I think it's a fabulous question and a fabulous idea. I mean, one of the things that really struck me about this story in particular is that I've seen a really great range of ways that schools respond to incidents like this.
Sure.
And this example certainly seems to, in some respects, fall down even on the more draconian ends of the scale, right? I mean, this is a pretty harsh response. I definitely have heard stories of other schools that have used, kids like this as sort of the frontline IT support. I think we were talking before the podcast started. I mean, like, kids are able to figure things out about school IT systems that educators, we don't have time to do that, right? And to do that research and to figure that stuff out. We can learn things about our own systems from these kids if we only engage them. And I think, particularly when you're talking about kids that are 12, 13, 14 years old, sometimes even younger than this, this kid could have done incredibly malicious things. I mean, he basically could have wiped all the school servers. He could have, harassed people in the school community. He could have changed his grades. He probably could have stolen money from the school district, right? He knew it wasn't right, but there was some self-restraint here that was shown. And, this is a kid who just needs, some attention and some direction. And clearly he's interested in technology. And I think, if the school had engaged him that way, he would have responded really well. And I think the school district would be in a better place. I think the student would clearly be in a better place. I mean, here he's looking at, facing criminal charges. He's been expelled. I have talked to him. He's taking online courses, right now at an online school, but that's not where they want to stay. But I mean, they expelled him in June, and he has nowhere to be in the fall. So
unbelievable.
His life trajectory has changed now, and hopefully it's recoverable for him. But you could see it spinning out quite poorly, where he had no disciplinary issues before, right? I mean, this is a kid who just needed an outlet, right, and attention from people who could help him. And school district turned its back on him in this case, is my view, and it's unfortunate. It's why I wanted to write this story up, though. At the same time, I am sympathetic because not every situation is the same. Some kids really do cross a line once they get into these systems, and there is a point at which where schools need to take action to protect, other kids and the adults in the system. I mean, there's a lot of sensitive data and things like that schools hold, but this example doesn't strike me as one like that.
Right. So the article is when 12-year-olds can breach school IT systems, who's responsible? It's on EdSurge. You should definitely go read it. It's incredibly interesting, and definitely there are way more questions to come. This is not an issue that's going away. It's an emerging issue and something that needs to be taken seriously. Doug, thanks for your time. This was awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure.
On Education is an on-podcast media production. My name is Mike Washburn. My co-host is Glen Irvin. You can get in touch with us or ask us questions to answer on air by visiting our website, oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Glen is at Spanish on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at Mr. Washburn. Our sound engineer is Jake Codeweiss. He's on Twitter at JK Radio. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be honored if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Schoology, for supporting us. Check out Schoology.com to learn how they can help you advance what's possible. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome. See you soon.